I call the advisory committee meeting to order at 8:01 p.m. All right, hello everybody. Long time no see.
Hello.
Hello.
I shouldn't take too long, but I thought we could cover some of our summer topics, and so we're not stacking it up too much into one meeting. Why don't we cover off on the minutes? I only had one small edit, which is basically the question that Claire had on the 35,000, but for line 58, that was 35,000. But did anybody else have any other edits?
No edits.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Roll call vote. Larry?
I'll abstain since I wasn't a member at that meeting.
All right. Tim?
Aye.
Marcy?
Aye.
Adam?
Aye.
Andrew is aye. 401. All right, that was quick. Chair report, update on meeting schedule. So we have a meeting scheduled for mid-July. That'll probably be the one where we'll do any interdepartmental transfers or reserve funds. Doesn't look like there's going to be that many this year. It looks pretty clean. So, but I'll wait till Brian gives me the final list. But that'll be our year-end cleanup meeting. We can probably cover maybe one or two other summer topics in that meeting because it doesn't sound like it's going to be too heavy. But I'll wait to see. Maybe we can talk about CPA or one of the other ones, revolving accounts. But I'll see what we have on tap for that. And then future meeting topics is the same kind of discussion, so nothing too crazy at this point. So last time when we had talked, we had topics to CPA increase, revolving accounts, outline of grants and budgets, other towns' budget books, which we'll cover tonight. Strategy meeting with the select board. I think they did their goals. I haven't seen them yet, so it might just be we need to get a copy of that maybe for our next meeting and see if there's anything finance related that we want to be tied into. Advisory website, we'll talk about that a little bit tonight, and then the DLS financial overview assessment that we'll talk about tonight too. So was there any other topics that people thought about that they wanted to maybe add to the list?
I have two small ones.
Sure.
One is, Andrew, I ran this by you informally, and I would like to invite Greg Martineau to request a small amount of money from our reserve to potentially update or renew the plaque in the Trotter entrance, which I feel isn't entirely appropriate. If anybody's interested, I'll get into it.
Sure. Yeah. Tell us more.
Well, I think, Tim, let's speak. I mean, it's not in our agenda, so I don't want to get too in depth about it, but since we're kind of adding it, the other thing is if we talk to Greg, they have their own reserve fund that they control.
Yeah, either way.
Yeah.
All I'm going to say at this point in time is that there are names on the plaque which run contrary to the idea of honoring anything to do with middle school education. It's a minor thing. And the second is this one's a little bit more difficult because Algonquin is in Northborough. I would like to try to pursue somehow the idea of the Northborough Select Board possibly pursuing a shared streets grant to get a traffic light at the entrance to Algonquin because it is a safety hazard. Obviously, it's Northborough, not Southborough, so there's nothing we can do about it directly. Those are the two things I would like to put on the agenda for the future.
So, Tim, I will add those to our agenda. Do you want to just kind of spearhead, the offline conversations that we would need to kind of, update the committee on those, and then we can take a position if needed?
Yeah.
happy to join any of those conversations, but I think we're not gonna make much traction in the meeting. It's gonna need to be outside.
Right.
Right. Okay, discussion and possible vote on the DLS annual financial management review of the town. In one of the last, we talked about this in our last meeting, but it actually came up in the select board meeting, I think on the 6th, where the finance committee actually formally asked the select board to formally ask Department of DLS to do a financial policy review. So you could, for free, they will, at the request of the local select board or mayor, come in and do a review of financial policies. And go ahead, Larry.
Sorry about this, but could you tell me what DLS stands for?
It's Division of Local Services.
Okay, thanks.
It's like the state finance area that they come up with all the cherry sheet information, all the financial data that the state provides to different towns. So they're kind of like the local finance overview and reporting area of the state.
Andrew, do you know when the last time we've done this, had a financial review?
From my understanding, we've never done it. And so basically there's two different reports that I've seen. Basically is they do a financial policies one, and then they do a financial management review. And I sent you copies kind of both, but the policy one is basically that policy. It goes to your capital policy, your stabilization policies, and just kind of updates those, which is what the finance committee asked the select board to look at, which is definitely good. I wanted to take it one step further and also do the financial management review, which will go into your budget process, your budget systems, even like your payroll systems. How are we accruing vacation? Is it systematic, et cetera, et cetera. So I was looking to, and I know the select board is also talking about doing that because I brought it up to them offline to say, if you're talking about the policies, you should also look at this, but I wanted to get this committee's take and then kind of get a formal vote to recommend to the select board that they do both of those reviews, or ask the state to perform both of those reviews. And then the state will come in and interview us and capital planning and different committees to kind of get information, and then they put together a proposal and kind of some information which is good for us to use to kind of do any transformative work on our policies and financial management. I'll pause there if anybody has any questions or comments.
So is the benefit, I guess, to the town, of course, there's a benefit, I would assume, of just getting an outside independent review and knowing, if we're compliant where we need to be and if there's any issues that we haven't uncovered. But is there also a benefit potentially in improving our status for loans or credit, or is there an advantage?
We're already the highest bond rating, so it's not, we're not going to get a higher rating from S&P, but it'll certainly help in terms of what they're going to bring up is going to be your best policies, your best systems, your best stuff that our auditor also brings up from time to time. So, it's just to enhance your overall financial footprint and kind of how you operate. So, there's only room for improvement, right? That it'll only benefit us.
If you were to do this, is this something that you could see doing on some regular basis, like every 5 years or every 10 years, or is this just a one-off?
You can. I didn't bother to look how often some of the town, I've seen towns do it multiple times. I'm not sure like how often they actually do it. I'm trying to find any towns in here that I can see multiples of. I don't really see many that have multiple. But yeah, I think you can request and they can, deny you from doing it. But
I would have no trouble with this. Oversight's always a good thing up to a point, but in terms of additional benefits.
Yeah.
They sort of wear off pretty quickly. Oh, you know,
Yeah.
we were reviewed 3 years ago by DLS. Well, okay, what have you done in the past 3 years, and what are you doing now?
Correct.
So I'm just, you know,
Yeah, here's one for Fairhaven. They did one in 2012 and then did it again in 2022. So it looks like you could certainly, so it's kind of like a strategic plan. So it's like, this is where you need to go. You want a new budget system. You want to do this reporting, staffing levels, right? So it's kind of like a strategic, almost like a master plan, but targeted towards your finance team, finance department.
And do you know if the recommendations that come out of this are suggestions or are they mandates?
But I believe they're just suggestions. It's just advisory.
Andrew and everyone, one of the things that I see online, if you go to mass.gov, Division of Local Services, which is their main homepage, it tells you that they're responsible for ensuring fairness and equity in local property taxation, overseeing local accounting and treasury management, interpreting state laws that affect local governments, distributing monthly local aid to cities, towns, and school districts, maintaining comprehensive financial data warehouse, and providing municipal financial management consulting services and training. I mean, it sounds to me like a very valuable resource. I particularly like the fact that, because I hear this often in other meetings, folks trying to interpret, I think, state laws that affect local governance. And so that might be an area that would be particularly valuable.
Yeah, I mean, they've done 183 of the financial management reviews across the state. So a majority of the towns, I believe, have had it, right? So it certainly, they've done it, they understand it. And just to give us, to basically have a free consultant come in to give us an overview and kind of benchmark us against our peers, I think it's certainly valuable.
Yeah.
Okay. Does anybody think it's not a worthy exercise? Is there a motion for advisory committee to make a suggestion to the select board to request both the financial management review and financial policies review by the Division of Local Services?
So moved.
Second.
I'll second.
All right, Larry. Tim.
Aye.
Marcy.
Aye.
Adam.
Aye.
Andrew is aye. 5-0. Great. And I think that'll be that's like a report that we can use to kind of strategically map out, different budget items in terms of systems or staffing in the future. Kind of remember, Tim, like the police study that they did on staffing and operations and that kind of thing that they used to kind of fix over about 5 or 6 years. Okay. Discussion on budget calendar and items that we'd like to add to future annual budget process, budget book, and possible additional staffing needs or support. So this was most of this came out of a workshop, a association of town finance committees. I think it was that's a meeting that Kathy Cook and myself attended a few months ago. And we met and they did a seminar with actually the town administrator from Northborough about his budget book and his budget process. And it was pretty eye-opening that they're a lot more robust and a lot further along in kind of their process and how they do things than we are. So I thought it was worthy to kind of look at how some of the other towns are doing it, what their budget book and capital plan looks like, how their calendars are structured. And maybe try to make some improvements this year or over the next few years, but I thought it was a worthy discussion. And then the other thing that became evident in some of those meetings and some of the discussions with people was the level of support that they would get from staff. And so a lot of the committees were either run by the town administrator or the finance department, the treasurer, the accountant. So usually the beginning of a advisory or a finance committee meeting was the town administrator and the town accountant or the town treasurer, talking about what was happening in the budget process or the town financials. And some towns actually have dedicated administrative support to help the committee, like the select board would, or planning committee, right? So I think both of those, we would be well served with something like that. So I think, having the discussions, if everybody agrees that that would be a worthy ask, having discussions with the select board, with Mark and with Brian to look at what we can do to kind of enhance our staff support. We are actually, compared to other towns, very light in our finance department staffing levels. Brian, I believe they had one extra finance person. I don't know, what was it, like 8-9 years ago, and they ended up, person left and they ended up not backfilling, and they've been kind of asking for a resource, and then they always pull it because of budget constraints. But I think either adding a partial resource or finding some administrative support from maybe the select board's office or someplace would be something that might be worth asking for in this year's budget cycle. But I wanted to kind of propose that. So I kind of talked a lot there. I sent out kind of the other budget books from the town. So why don't I open up, see if anybody has any, what direction we want to go in to talk first. Okay. Hi, Claire.
I
I mean, I
agree,
think,
but I don't count.
oh, sir, you certainly count.
Oh, thanks.
Maybe if we look at the budget calendar, for instance, Westboro, which I think has a similar town meeting time that we do. They start the goals and strategic needs in August, September, and then the really December is when the request of the operating budget comes into the town administrator. Then the finance committee kind of does things in December, but the channel is usually through kind of the town administrator. So I think kind of adopting a similar budget calendar, and I can mock up one that we can review at a later meeting, but kind of stealing some of these other towns, kind of the best practices and coming up with a calendar is one thing that I think we definitely need. And then there's the actual physical budget book, which the town had used to produce, and we haven't produced in years. And we actually got a request from one of the citizens this year, why don't we do something like other towns do? And basically it came down to, well, nobody's really asked for it, and we stopped doing it during COVID, and is it worth doing? And there's an argument to be said, if nobody was reading it, is it worth completing? Maybe not, but at the same time, I think it's a valuable piece of information, especially for historical purposes, to archive that. But what do you guys think?
You talking about a digital one?
Well, like the PDF.
Yeah.
Or, even like that ClearGov software was supposed to have like a budget book module that would kind of pull all the financials automatically into a budget book, and you would just add some narrative and your org charts or whatever. But we never really got into that module. But I think, one of my questions was, I sent out a couple of copies or versions of Westboro's and I think Northborough's budget book, whether or not that's something we think we should produce, or kind of stick with we do the spreadsheet and we do our letter, right? Which is obviously less work to do one of these budget books. That's where the staffing and support from Brian and team would be required. But whether or not it's certainly a valuable resource, and it's nice to look at, and it's well concise, and it's got everything you need there, but is it worth the investment we would have to make in time and resources to do it, or not?
Yeah, that's where you kind of brought it up already, Andrew, is what is the real demand for this in town, and is anyone going to use it? And
Yeah.
I guess how many people need to actually use it for it to be worthwhile? And maybe there's certain departments that people care more about, and maybe, I don't know. I guess I'd want to do a survey perhaps at either on like the town website or a future town meeting, and see if there's actual utility from the perspective of the town for it.
Yep. And it's, you know, also whether or not this financial management review might actually come up with, you know, best practice is to do one of these, or this is how you could do it, you know, efficiently, right? That's kind of, you know, where we could tie this into that kind of an analysis. But again, it's a valuable document. The question is how much time and effort is needed going to go into it to produce it.
Andrew, is it the kind of thing that once you do it once, then in the following years, you sort of are updating or changing what you already built? You know, like the first time around is intense labor and the next time around is a lot easier.
Yeah.
I mean, I would see some value in it if you didn't have to recreate it from scratch every year, if for no other reason than for advisory members. I almost feel like we start from scratch every time. And I've only
Yeah.
done 2 budgets, but you know what I mean? I mean, the spreadsheet is nice, but I'm still going back thinking all the time, like, well, I don't really, I don't remember, you know, mileage for whatever
Correct.
DPW. And that one stands out to me because I'm going to bring that up this year, but
Yeah.
so anyway, I don't,
Yeah, especially like new
strongly
people to the
convinced either
town,
way,
like, you know,
Yep.
this is like, how do you read the budget? What is the process? A guide to the budget, right? You know, the organization chart of the town, the
well,
boards.
that would be very helpful because
Right.
that's confusing.
Yeah, the profile, the community, you know, and then you have all the, you know, the budgets and the, you know, all the information, the general administration budgets.
Yeah.
Public safety, you know, all the different budgets that you would have, you know, it's clean, it's organized. Versus what we do is we just basically send the spreadsheet, right? It's,
Right.
you know, but there's each one of these has a, you know, this is where it gets tricky and it gets cumbersome, is to have the summaries and the narratives and, you know, what are we doing and what did the town do? But I think it's valuable stuff. And this is all stuff that we hear and we either get in a narrative statement or in our conversations with the department heads, but you know, to have a section that could, you know, talks about the
Right.
historical trend of local receipts, right? We might know that because of the spreadsheets
Right.
we have or we look at, but the average citizens isn't going to get into that level of detail. But
I don't
they
think
have they in the past too.
I don't think they'd get into a 35-page document either.
No, it's more like this is almost like an
This is
annual
a
report, right?
400. This is a 435-page document, Tim. That's where I'm getting at.
That's interesting.
I think
Yeah.
for something this extensive, we would need admin help.
Correct. I mean, this
I
has
mean-
like all the policies are in here and, you know, different presentations. I mean, this thing's a beast, right?
It is a beast.
Yeah, and I think, Marcy, the one that I looked at, I didn't look at Northborough's, I looked at Westborough's. It
Mm.
did seem like most of it is actually not very plug and play.
Useful. Okay.
No, not, yeah, I guess useful is I'm not sold on it yet. Like it's a
Yeah.
really nice document and it could be
Yeah.
really useful, but I don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Northborough, they won like national awards for their budget book, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't
okay.
know if we're looking to get to that level. Or do we just kind of do our, you know, are we doing enough? That's kind of was my question. I mean, I think if since I've been on the committee, we've only had one person that ever asked for that budget book that we used to produce, but maybe we could come some kind of middle ground. I
Maybe.
know when I was looking on the town website, the new one, I realized that there's a bunch of documents on there, including the old like budget files, which needs to be cleaned up. We'll talk about that later. But so maybe it's not this 435-page monstrosity, but maybe it's a little bit more than what we're doing. And that's basically what this conversation I'm trying to gauge is, what should we target? We're not going to go from 0 to this, right? But somewhere between a little bit more than just our letter and our spreadsheet, which we don't share, right? It's really just ours. can the public get to get a little more information, you know, out there. But probably not to this extent.
Yeah, I
And,
mean,
and
I think that makes sense. If we summarized the conversations we have when we're reviewing the budgets and documented trends and rationale for things
Yeah.
each year, you know, eventually it would become a little bit easier to create something like this than starting by scratch. It is just such a daunting
Yeah.
benchmark.
I mean, this is like a capital item. It's like each capital item has an entire page with a picture. I mean, this is like, but yeah, I mean, I think this is going to be very ambitious to do without real significant staffing level of support. But I think, you know, working on something in the, you know, closer to maybe a 20-page thing, not a 400-page thing. But something that, to your point, Marcy, is once you do it once is kind of repeatable. But, you know, I think that's maybe where we can utilize some conversations. There are some budget book building tools that maybe we can look at. I know we had looked at doing, looked at some budget tools about a year ago, softwares to replace ClearGov, and actually looked at ClearGov again. But that kind of has fizzled. So part of that financial management review conversation I wanted to have was tools for doing your budget. But I want to kind of preemptively talk about this because I don't know when that review is going to happen, and we'll be in budget season before we know it. But
I was going to make the point that it seems to me, if this is something that we think has value, and I'm not talking about a 435-page document, though, that, you know, looking at things that are effectively automatable over time, so that, you know, the various spreadsheets that are generated in the various forms that are generated as part of the budget process. And since I've had no insight into that, I don't know what exists, but, you know, at some point it would be nice if you basically could, you know, push a button and turn those into a good chunk of this document.
Yeah.
And then, you know, have somebody add some of the prose that you see here.
Okay.
As introductory.
all right, so I think that's, you know, kind of Larry, a good synopsis, you know, it's good solution, and kind of the direction that I was thinking originally was, you know, let's use this financial management review and kind of the fact that we're out of COVID and we're starting to get more back to usual. And we're looking to kind of revamp, you know, advisories, processes, and kind of streamline things and add technology where we can, to start looking at ways to create a budget book that's maybe not 400 pages, but that's, you know, better than what we have, but is low manual intervention and high, you know, automation. You know, digitization of the process so that we're not manually keying things into Word documents or PowerPoints, right? That we're
Exactly.
utilizing the technology as best as possible. So kind of adding that to our strategic plan to get to a point where we can start to do that. Okay. In terms of staff support, what does everybody think about, you know, requesting that we have either the town administrator or finance department head attend our meetings, you know, like they do the capital planning meetings, or attend occasional meetings, and or also asking for administrative support to do some of the, you know, the administrative tasks of the committee, which it's been taking up a lot of my time and is you know, can be difficult.
What are some of those things, Andrew?
I mean, a lot of it is like, you know, doing, you know, even setting up the meetings, doing the agendas, getting them posted, you know, working with everybody on finding availability, you know, going to Jay and setting up the actual Zoom calls, you know, putting together the packet of information for everybody to see, and then, you know, working with Claire to make sure that she has that to post for the minutes, and making sure the minutes get posted, right? Just some of the stuff that it doesn't necessarily require a financial, you know, acumen, but takes a lot of time. You know, During budget season, I was getting overwhelmed, as you know, with little ones at home. So,
Yeah.
looking at a lot of other committees in other towns, I was kind of looking at their structures and like Northborough's, I watched some of their meetings because I was interested in some of the votes that they were taking on some of the Algonquin things. And like their town administrator ran their meetings, right? He put together the agenda. He basically chaired the committee. I mean, there was a chair, but he, spoke and set it up and kind of had the flow. And he would tee things up and then they would vote on things. So it's definitely different than how we've operated. I'm not sure we need to go to that extent, but I think there's a happy medium between the two where we get a little bit more staff support because we're one of the largest, or most important committees in this town, and we have no staff support, right?
Yeah.
ZBA does, planning does, select board does, you go down the line, EDC, recreation, everybody's got staff support, except for advisory in terms of larger committees. And we have Claire, and Claire is great, but there's a lot more that happens outside of what Claire does that I think we are due some support, or at least we can ask for it and see what comes back.
I support that idea, Andrew. Also, I'm happy to help you with some of those administrative tasks. Until we have such support. So, I'm happy to talk offline about it, whatever you might need.
I mean, I think it's just for me, and when I wear my private sector hat, we are a board of trustees finance committee, right? When we look at it, we approve the budget, but we also build the budget, right? Which is very strange, right? Normally the budget comes to you pretty well baked. You can opine on it. You can send things back. You can make questions, but I mean, I'm doing a lot of calculations myself, running scenarios, tracking things down, which is fine, right? That's, but some of the stuff where, it's not, you don't need the background, you don't need to have the advisory knowledge to do, we should push off as much as possible. And we're all volunteers, right? And we all spend a lot of time on this, and, I'm very grateful for all of that. But at the same time, I think we were benefited in the past of having chairs and, especially Kathy, who took on a lot herself and had the bandwidth to do. And thank you for doing all of that. But it's not sustainable as a committee.
Yeah, and Andrew, it sounds like it actually benefits the town, not just the committee, because it frees you up to do more high value of things, and so I'm definitely in support of it.
Yeah, go ahead, Claire.
I was just going to make one comment for those of, I was on advisory way back when John Butler was on there. And one of the things is the full budgets used to be posted all in one location. And I think that that's one thing that I miss in terms of looking at the guts of a particular budget versus the very, very high level, like, for example, that you see in the warrant.
Yep. Yeah, Claire, we'll cover that off when we get to the website, because one of the things is
Okay.
that I didn't realize it's on the new website, but I didn't realize it was embedded somewhere in our old one, is like all the department budgets from, I think, 2017 are on there, or years ago. So whether or not we want to kind of adopt that process of putting on some of the detailed budgets into the website. Right now they sit on, on the drive, on OneDrive. But whether or not we actually want to, release them out to the public, and what's the best channel to do that, and making sure that they get the most up-to-date versions, et cetera, et cetera. But we could talk about that when we get to the website. But yeah, I agree with you, Claire. Now, ClearGov was great because anybody could log on and they could see the up-to-date budget. But again, this might be hopefully something that comes out of the management review, that, what's the best process for doing that, and what's the best way to make sure the public is informed. All right. Uptown website. There we go. Now we jump right into the next one. Anybody else want to cover anything off on the budget book or the? I think we had a pretty good discussion. I got some good guidance on that. Let me pull up the website. The new website. So basically, when I went on to look at the new website, it came pretty obvious to me that we haven't touched this thing in quite a while. And probably we need to do a good job of trying to clean it up and edit it a bit. Like if you look at this, budgets was the one, Claire, that I was talking about. You have the different fiscal years, and that's the actual full budget. And then the where was it?
Police and fire station, 2015 to 2016.
Yeah, this handbook here is from 2008. Here it was correspondence received, and then they have in here all the different Excel files from 2011. So Claire, I thought if we posted all these, the most recent versions, or at least a snapshot in time, maybe like, a monthly version of all the different budgets in the folder in here, I think that would be certainly an improvement.
Can I ask a basic question?
Sure.
Why do we need this?
The website,
Yes.
I don't know, keep the public informed.
Well, I guess to that question, do we know people are going to this website?
I had never seen this information on the old one, so it might have been buried. I don't know, maybe if you search through the documents or something, you could find them, but I don't remember having all of these, sections, right? But I think, posting our, reports,
What? I'm sorry, I can't see the URL for this.
southboroughtown.com. Do you see the top, or is it just,
It's just covered.
let me just share the
Is
screen.
it southboroughtown.com?
Yeah, southboroughtown.com, and then you just click on boards and committees, advisory committee.
Got it. All right, I'm sorry. I didn't realize it was that one. Do we have full access to the content for that area?
I think so. I think everybody does. I didn't try clicking on anything, but it just kind of.
No, I mean edit access.
Oh, I have no idea. Larry,
I mean,
do you
I
have
would-
any idea? I would assume it's just Jay and the IT team that can edit the sites, but I remember for capital planning, like Jason had the ability to load some things.
I think the goal is that each committee will be able to manage the content on their particular pages. I'm not sure that they're there yet, though.
Yeah, at this point, I would say other than the about page, which has our names, and that's probably, I mean, is that redundant to another page already?
I think it's also in the committee, that site where you can apply for committees and things like that. But it hyperlinks you, I think, to the contact info, like the email. But I mean, I think the page is fine. I mean, this is pretty standard for the town websites.
Yeah. I mean, if we're not going to actively maintain it, we should shut it down.
Well, that was kind of my point, is do we actively maintain it and put some actual relevant documents in here, or do we clear out everything and just have this,
Yeah.
overall?
Does the page have a counter on it?
I don't think so.
Okay. I mean, again, this is kind of like the earlier conversation, right? If there's no value, why would we put the work in?
Exactly.
I mean, one of the things, and I agree, although I think there's value at least in having this page. But one of the things you could think about is the NTC has been in this mode of doing a survey every year and getting input from various towns and departments about what questions they'd like to ask. And we could certainly ask them to include some questions to find out what level of interest people in the town have for budget and finance information. and we can structure the questions any way we'd like, but get some input. And if it seems like nobody's interested, then, you know, I wouldn't spend the time maintaining it, but if there seems to be interest, then I think we would have a responsibility to at least provide some information.
Yeah. And I think there was I think some of the budget information was also posted, I think on like the town meeting site, but that was just like the overview XLS, you know, the regular Brian spreadsheet. So I think this kind of goes to like that transformative thing. I think
But that long list of Excel spreadsheets from 2011 and 2014, and I mean, that's useless. At this
Yeah.
point.
exactly. But I mean, so I think, you know, my recommendation was maybe myself and maybe if one other person wanted to volunteer, help me go through there and just see what needs to get thrown out, right? I mean, that stuff for sure needs to just get removed. I don't think we need to have the full committee sit there and say that 2011 Excel files probably are not valid to have hyperlinked.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'd help with that, Andrew.
Sure. Okay. Makes sense. So we can just, have a quick call, you and I, and check mark stuff off if that works for everybody, unless everybody wants to sit on a call and go line by line. Okay. So yeah, we'll work to, Adam and I will work to just clean up the site. And then, and then maybe Adam, you and I can also, if we want to throw some already existing stuff that we have, like either the departmental budgets or the overall budget file, or, the stuff that we have in our internal folders, if we want to put that on the site, the letter or the handbook or even that training, PDF that we had done, teach people about what we do or something, whatever we have lying around, that's not going to cause us to have to create things. We can talk about whether or not any of that makes sense to load.
Yeah, I'm wondering, Andrew, too, if I don't know if we do anything like this on our other sites on that town website, but even just like a request for information that, people go there and are searching for something, and maybe that's a way to find out what they're actually looking for there.
Yeah, most of the time, people either do the search and they just try to find something, right? And they go through minutes or whatever documents have been loaded and attached, or they do a public records request, right? I mean, anything that's in our folders and files and the budget files and our working versions are all public records, right? So any of that can be, done a public records request. It's just, do we want people to go through that effort, or do we want to make it a little bit, more centralized? Okay, so we'll give that a shot and see. I mean, eventually, I still liked ClearGov, where you had a website and it was pretty with charts and the budget was updated and all the information was right there. But again, we got rid of that. So this is kind of the interim, what do we do now? We have this new website, clean it up and see if there's a couple things we want to check the box on while we try to make a better process. All right. Any other questions on the website? Now, one weird thing that Marcy pointed out to me, actually, let me pull it up. So if you go to the website, this was fun. The advisory committee is showing as our meetings at 8 a.m. And then if you went to the virtual meetings page, right?
Yeah, virtual
Yeah,
meetings
Virtual
shows
meetings
7.
page, it had our meeting at 7. And then we had our meeting was posted at 8, and it was in the Zoom calendar for 8. So I think there's still some bugs that they're working out of the new website, but
Yeah,
all over the
I
place.
panicked for a second because I
Yeah.
thought, oh my gosh, it's at 7, but then it said host won't admit you till 8, and I thought, okay, but
All right.
I listened briefly to MTC last night, and they seem to be clearing up some bugs and working on it.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah,
they
like
were
if you look
running
like
through some things.
our minutes are still like a lot of them are missing for this year.
Yeah,
They're working to finish those ones up, even though I think we're all cut up we did, Claire, we approved the ones
Yeah.
tonight. We only had one minor edit, so nothing crazy. But I think we're all caught up.
Would be. Yeah, there's still advisories and family.
Yeah.
So, and the other thing is like on the old site, you could go back a couple, 3-4 years and pull up. And I know they're only going back a couple, but it seems like with all of the committees, they're only doing this year so far. So
Yeah, I think they were working on some data
there's still quite a few
migration.
things that they have to get worked out. Just as a user, if I can just make a comment, because between trying to find information with my work that I do for EDC, and then sometimes going back and referencing stuff for advisory, it's difficult to find information, and I'm really pretty familiar with everything. You know, I use the old website a lot, and now trying to work on the new one. And I guess my question is, and was the goal setting meeting for the select board televised or recorded?
I don't believe they did. I think they just had it in person.
Okay, so it would be interesting to see what kind of recommendations or whatever they came up out of that.
Yeah, and one of the things we were gonna do with their goals was, there's always a few goals that are finance related.
Right,
Kinds that it might make sense for, and I talked to Kathy about this before she stepped down as chair, to kind of maybe sync up with an advisory member on some of the goals, kind of assign, dual hat the goal for an advisory member and a select board member. But once I see that list, we can review it at the next meeting. Okay. Yeah, item for the fire department, I think that if we get it would be a next fiscal year thing, so maybe the next meeting that would come up, but I think they're also looking to see whether or not that might come into a fall town meeting or some other avenue for the matching funds, although it doesn't sound like there may be enough for a fall town meeting. So we might not have one. So that's something we can discuss at a later meeting, which, the only thing that maybe was going to be on there was the CPA surcharge increase. But technically that doesn't even need to go to town meeting, just needs signatures. So we could even do it just a signature route and not have to have a town meeting specifically for that. All right. Any other business properly brought forth? Anybody else have anything else want to cover? All right, public comment. Claire?
I'm all that's left.
All right. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. So moved.
Second,
Second,
roll call vote. Larry,
I.
Tim,
Aye.
Adam,
Hi.
Marcy,
Aye.
Andrew, thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Good night.
Bye.
Um,